FloridaTPO.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler. On today's First Coast Connect, after a tumultuous year in politics, what does 2026 hold? We get the political prognostications of attorney and analyst Chris Hand. Then we hear from legendary jazz trumpeter, composer, and Jacksonville native Charles Tolliver as he prepares to play his first ever concert in his hometown. And celebrating the spirit of the season in one of the city's most historic neighborhoods, we preview La Villa in lights. Join the conversation. Give us a call on air at 904-549-2937 or head to firstcoastconnect.org, where you can find all of the ways you can connect with us and also sign up for our new daily newsletter. Stick around. We'll be back right after the news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The government says consumer prices rose in November by 2.7% from a year ago. Consumer costs did not go up as much as some economists expected, but it's still higher than the 2% inflation rate the Federal Reserve is seeking. The House has passed a package of health care provisions backed by Speaker Mike Johnson, but it does not extend subsidies for people on plans under the Affordable Care Act. Separately, 4 Republicans joined Democrats yesterday to force a measure to the House floor. That would extend subsidies for 3 years. It's not what Speaker Johnson wanted, but he says there's no ill will about it.
It's not an act of defiance. I understand what they're doing. I understand that every member has a different district with different dynamics and different demographics. And some of them felt like it was a really important thing to have a vote on the floor.
It's unlikely Congress will pass any health care pricing relief before the end of the year. Many people who use the subsidies will see prices skyrocket on January 1st. Finals week is a stressful time for college students across the country, but it's greater for students facing food insecurity. NPR's Caden Mills met with students who are stocking up ahead of winter break.
2 in 5 college students are food insecure, meaning they don't have consistent access to food. That's according to the nonprofit Swipe Out Hunger. Amy Wheeler oversees the food pantry at Penn State Harrisburg.
We try to really supply the students with whatever we possibly can.
She says as grocery prices have gone up, more students are visiting the pantry, and she expects the number to continue rising in the new year. Junior Miles Perry is one of those students.
So I had to get essentials.
Like many students, Perry has a job on campus, but visits the pantry when his income isn't enough.
I mean, hey, gotta eat.
And at finals time, a full stomach is especially important for students. Caden Mills, NPR News, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
The Department of Health and Human Services has abruptly terminated 7 grants made to the American Academy of Pediatrics. The group is a vocal critic of Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s changes to federal vaccine policy. NPR's Maria Godoy has more.
The canceled grants involved initiatives in multiple areas of child health, including reducing sudden infant death, early identification of autism, and prevention of fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. In a statement to NPR, Mark Del Monte, the CEO of AAP, said, quote, "The sudden withdrawal of these funds will directly impact and potentially harm infants, children, youth, and their families in communities across the United States." He said the American Academy of Pediatrics is exploring all available options, including legal recourse, to address the grant terminations. HHS did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Maria Godoy, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. You're listening to WJCT News, 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. The Jacksonville Planning Commission chair has resigned from the commission to take a job in New York City. Charles Garrison had been on the commission since 2023 and was the chair twice, according to a report from news partners at the Jacksonville Daily Record. The Planning Commission reviews land use changes and area planning. Vice Chair Monet Holder will take over the role of chair. Garrison's departure leaves an empty spot on the 9-member commission. A new report from the Tampa Bay Times and Miami Herald shows Governor Ron DeSantis' administration diverted more than $35 million in taxpayer money to fight two ballot initiatives last year. The measures would have legalized recreational marijuana and overturned the state's 6-week ban on abortions. Reporter Justin Garcia says the diversions may not have been illegal, but they were certainly suspect.
The governor and the administration do have discretion on how they spend state funds, but several people saw it as bending procurement laws and also as kind of just morally and ethically bankrupt.
A Leon County grand jury is considering whether DeSantis' administration diverted $10 million from a Medicaid settlement through a charity known as Hope Florida to fight the measures. Have the umbrella handy this evening. Rain is in the forecast, mainly for areas around the I-10 corridor and to the north. Some of those showers that move through could have some brief heavy downpours in them. It'll be warm today despite the rain. Highs will reach the low to mid-70s. Cold front will push through the area tomorrow along with some drier air.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fidelity Investments. A dedicated advisor can help build a flexible wealth plan. Learn more at fidelity.com/wealth. Investment minimums apply. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC.
From the ongoing affordability crisis to the future of redistricting, AI, legislative infighting, there are plenty of political pit stops and potholes on the road ahead. Here to help us navigate it all is Chris Hand, attorney, author, and local government expert. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Ann. Great to see you as always. Happy holidays.
Yeah, you as well. And it's great to see you as ever. When we were talking about this interview today, you said you prefer looking ahead. And we talked about, is it appropriate to do sort of a year in review? And you said you prefer looking through the windshield rather than looking back at the rear view mirror. So sticking with that metaphor, how hazardous are driving conditions these days?
Well, that's a great question, Ann, and I think something that's on kind of people's minds in a variety of ways for so many different sort of factors. Obviously, in terms of kind of construction that's going on here in Florida, we experienced this with the continued growth of the state. Every morning, once a month when I come to WJCT, I cross my fingers and hope, please don't have the day be the day that I don't make it on time because of the construction. Because of the construction and all that.
And our parking lot is a big part of that too. So speaking of hazards, I mean, there was a very, widely read and much discussed article that appeared in Vanity Fair this week. A series of interviews that were done with Susie Wiles, Donald Trump's chief of staff, and former chief of staff here in Jacksonville for a couple of mayors. You yourself were a chief of staff for a mayor in Jacksonville. And I'm just curious, what your take is on sort of her decision to provide that kind of access, and what she said, which has been given a lot of attention, sort of your take on her comments.
It's interesting, and I think there was a lot of surprise nationally about the sort of candor of the comments that Susie, made to the Vanity Fair reporter, which ended up in that piece. What's interesting is I think here in Florida, particularly in Northeast Florida, for those of us who know Susie or familiar with her candid responses to some of those questions, not surprising. That is, I think, very much in keeping with, how Susie has kind of done business over the years, how she's interacted in this situation, a straight shooter, someone who sort of says it like it is. So I don't think that was, when I read sort of the contents of that Vanity Fair article, I thought this is very much in keeping with, who Susie is and what she's done. I think the surprise that people probably felt nationally is it's just unusual to have a White House chief of staff be that visible and that public about their views on a variety of issues and people in the administration. Again, She didn't pull any punches in some of those kind of responses that she had. While that may not be surprising here, I think it is more surprising for that role, which tends to be a role that operates more in the background, is visible but also not visible. But I think the key to remember about the role of White House Chief of Staff, at the end of the day, there is, as they say, a constituency of one. That one being, in her case, the President of the United States, from whom she seems to enjoy enormous confidence. I think we saw in the aftermath of that article where in many administrations one might think, well, this could put that particular chief of staff's job in some jeopardy. Quite the opposite in Susie's case, where there were statements of support from not only people throughout the Republican Party and the administration, but some of the very people she talked about in those comments also came out with statements of support. So if anything, it might have kind of consolidated her kind of authority and support within the administration. Look, just sort of we've now had, this is the second opportunity that we've had to observe a Trump presidency, the first one being from 2017 to 2021, now the second one. And I think more than anything, it would be a problem for this administration if it were not attracting attention and getting media coverage than opposed to as it is. Because so I think the dynamics here are just different. This is not, anything different than, Susie's been throughout her career, and someone who's worked very closely with reporters. That's been her job at various stops. And so, again, I don't think anything was too surprising to folks who have been observers of her in government. Nationally, it's a little more surprising, but maybe not surprising in the context of this administration.
Well, sure. And I would say this administration has done a lot to sort of inure us from statements that might otherwise be shocking, right? I think we've all raised our threshold in terms of what meets that bar. One thing that was interesting to me was sort of her philosophy about a chief of staff as a facilitator and gatekeeper, I guess, but not so much somebody that is inclined to push back or have difficult conversations with the president, on occasion. But it seems that her focus is much more on making sure that his agenda gets done regardless. And I wonder if you think that that's standard for chiefs of staff, or if you think that that is different than other people in that role.
I don't know if there is one set standard playbook, and I think there's probably a little bit of a variety of different functions that go into a role like that. One is, as you say, I mean, the whoever the principal is, the president or another chief executive, has an agenda that they want to accomplish, and a big part of the chief of staff's job is to help advance those strategic priorities and that agenda, and figure out how to work throughout the entire government to align people around those priorities and help to move them forward. So I think, what she's describing is a big part of the job. Different people view the job in different ways. There are some who view the job as, look, this is a job where it's very important to speak truth to power and be someone who, as a chief executive, is making these decisions, can provide them not only sort of a variety of views, make sure they have a variety of perspectives in front of them so they can make the kind of best possible decision with all the information they can, but also be someone who can weigh in and be able to speak candidly and say, look, here are problems that we may face if we go down this road, or here are opportunities that we may be missing. So I think each chief of staff, there's no set playbook. Each person kind of takes a little bit of a different approach. It was very illuminating to sort of read in that article, what Susie views as her approach as the White House chief of staff.
Well, an interesting story, obviously being talked about a lot. So I want to discuss, what is the sort of number one issue, it seems, on everybody's minds, including the president's these days, as much as he sort of tries to maintain that focus, is affordability. And Floridians are not unique in terms of, facing those challenges, a lot of challenges around housing. Describe to us what indicators you're looking at in Florida, what people here are watching, especially from a political standpoint.
Well, and this has been the dominant issue economically and politically for the last 2 years now. I mean, I think Mara Liasson from NPR said repeatedly throughout the 2024 election, inflation ends presidencies. And she was right. Inflation ended the Biden-Harris administration and helped to facilitate the return of Donald Trump to the White House. The shoe is on the other foot now. It has continued to be sort of a major issue in 2025, and those affordability concerns have largely propelled Democrats to overperform in off-year elections and special elections in 2025. it's massively on Americans' minds. And I don't see any reason that's going to change in 2026, just because a number of the indicators and suggest that it can continue to be a challenge. Just in the last week, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has come out with sort of new numbers. In fact, they're going to release some new inflation numbers today. And what we're seeing is that sort of wage growth is at its lowest level in 4 years. It's about 3.5%. Inflation is just over 3% right now. I think the projection today is that they're going to have about a 3.1% annual inflation rate that they'll project today. So what that means is wages are barely keeping up with kind of the increasing cost of goods in this country. And some of that's driven by unemployment is now about 4.5%. So really at one of the highest levels in quite some time as well. So that sort of economic uncertainty on the issue of inflation and prices in general. Of course, part of this, and we'll probably get more information on this in the next several months, is kind of tariffs and what impact tariffs are having on inflation. Right now, some studies suggest that companies have been eating about 80% of the tariffs that are out there. But that's not sustainable. They can't do that forever. I mean, if tariffs continue in some form or fashion, and there's a case before the U.S. Supreme Court right now, which is going to decide whether the tariffs that were issued were legal or not, and whether the president might have other ways to do that.
Or whether he might have to return some of the money he's collected.
Issue sort of tariff refunds, exactly. But again, even if that decision goes in the direction of where some people think it might, and the Supreme Court strikes down the tariffs, there's still uncertainty about will the Trump administration look for other ways to impose those tariffs. That all creates uncertainty in the economic market. It's difficult for businesses to plan, sort of not knowing kind of what the cost dynamics are going to be in this country. So as a result, what you have is sort of a slowdown on hiring. Part of the reason I think you've seen the Federal Reserve cut rates at its last 3 meetings is to try and kind of encourage kind of business borrowing, largely for the purpose of hiring. But with all the uncertainty out there, I think that makes it difficult for that to happen. So I think you are likely to see over the course of the next year continued concerns about affordability because, again, this is rarely something that turns on a dime overnight. We hadn't seen significant inflation in this country for almost 40 years when it struck kind of during the pandemic. Having a reversal of fortune in that regard takes a lot of time and effort as well. So that's going to continue to be the dominant issue. And we're going to see it in a variety of ways, like you referred to. Probably the most immediate is going to be on the subject of health care. As you know, it looks very unlikely that Congress is going to pass an extension of the pandemic era enhanced subsidies for the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, as some call it. So that means, people are going to see, very significant price increases in their health insurance starting in 2026. Here in Florida, Florida is the state that has the biggest population of people who get health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. It's about 4.7 million. The projections are right now from some studies that have been done that a third of those people, 1.5 million, may lose health insurance altogether as a result of these kind of changes in the subsidy structure. And for those who do maintain it, I think there's an expected increase of about 132% in premiums, or over $500, a month on kind of premium prices. That's a massive economic shock to have that sort of amount of money coming out on health care, in addition to the issues we're seeing with housing and other areas as well. So I don't think there's any question in 2026 the dominant economic and political issue will continue to be affordability.
And we know that our Northeast Florida lawmakers and our senators from Florida have backed the sort of the general Republican approach to this. They have not supported extending those subsidies. They're generally dissatisfied with the affordability part of the Affordable Care Act, and they want, significant changes to it. As much exposure as Florida has, are you at all surprised that Florida's representatives in D.C. have not been a little bit more concerned about that enormous spike that a lot of people are going to see when their premiums go up starting in a few weeks?
I think that has been surprising that we haven't seen more conversation about it. But this has not proven to be, at the end of the day, and really a partisan issue. Just in the last 24 hours, this has been the year that Congress has been increasingly governed by what are called discharge petitions, getting a majority of members of Congress to try and bring matters directly to the House floor. Just in the last couple of days, a bipartisan coalition of Democrats and several Republicans from swing state seats around the country, have come up with the 218 votes they need to try and bring that directly to the House floor. I think part of what it speaks to is in Florida, we just don't have as many of those swing districts anymore in the congressional delegation. Some of the Republicans around the country who have joined this bipartisan coalition are in seats that could very much be in jeopardy in 2026 in the election. Florida just doesn't have as many of those anymore because of the redistricting that's happened over time.
It's not that their constituents wouldn't be affected. It's that they're in seats that are so secure they don't have to worry about it.
I think that's part of the factor. There's maybe less political pressure to do that. And there is, I mean, to be fair, there is on the part of some kind of philosophical opposition to the Affordable Care Act and its approach and concerns about the way that it's implemented at time. I don't want to suggest at all that some of those concerns aren't, grounded in philosophy or even legitimate. But I think one thing we have seen in the now, almost 16 years since the Affordable Care Act was passed is, or at the beginning there was a lot of skepticism about it. The American public has now made up its mind. It supports the ACA. I mean, the most recent polling has close to 60% of those polls saying they support the Affordable Care Act. It has become a massive lifeline for people to get health insurance who don't have it through their jobs, people who own small businesses and they don't have good sources of health insurance except for the ACA. So it's become a crucial part of the national economic network. I think there's going to be a lot, there probably already is because people have gotten their sort of 2026 premium notices. But I think there's going to, once people start paying those bills in 2026, there's going to be a lot of sticker shock. I think a lot of pushback around the country. And as we've seen, I think one thing a dynamic that'll be interesting to track, a lot of the impact and of the enhanced subsidies going away is going to fall into so-called red areas, states that sort of generally vote Republican, including Florida, as we're talking about. So I think it'll be important to track this, particularly in the first month or two of 2026, as people are having to pay those increased premiums. Very sadly, in some cases, have to lose health insurance overall because they can't afford those premiums. That may motivate more action by Congress.
All right. If you're just joining us, we are talking to Chris Hand about the political road ahead. You can join the conversation on air by calling 904-549-2937, or you can email comments or questions to First Coast Connect at wjct.org. You can also go to firstcoastconnect.org and find all the ways to connect with us. We have an email from Michael. He says he'd like Chris to comment on the Miami Herald-Tampa Bay Times investigation that found Governor DeSantis' administration diverted $35 million in taxpayer funds for ads opposing two ballot amendments last year. So this is the money that resulted from a settlement the state did, and money that kind of ended up in the Hope Foundation charity and then ended up in some ads.
Well, this is the so-called, people may follow it, the Hope Florida sort of scandal that has somewhat kind of engulfed the DeSantis administration. Funds that Florida got sort of as part of a refund from the Medicaid program found their way into political ads opposing the sort of initiative last year that would have legalized small amounts of recreational marijuana. And so there's a lot of kind of concern out there. There's active investigations. A grand jury has been sort of impaneled to kind of review this matter, as has been sort of widely reported at this point. And, there are a variety of figures in state government. And again, not something that has cut just purely on partisan lines. There are Republican members, particularly in the state house, who have been very focused on this scandal. Alex Andrade, who's a member of the state house from the Pensacola area, has been particularly dialed in on this. And I think the question has really surrounded the propriety of taking funds the state got through a health care program and utilizing them for political purposes. I think at the underlying this entire scandal has been sort of the shifting of what has been a longstanding norm in state government. The taxpayer dollars should not be used for political purposes in any kind. And that has been a sort of an idea that has sort of united both the parties for many years. I think part of what's a shock about this scandal is the fact that such a large amount of money seems to have been diverted for those purposes. Again, I think we're going to learn more in 2026. Again, there are active investigations looking into that. It's very clear to me, based on some of the recent comments, that the legislature is not done with this issue, and they are going to be continuing, particularly the state house is going to continue to be looking into this. So I think we are likely to learn a lot more about Hope, Florida, and what exactly happened there as we get deeper into 2026.
So finding out is one thing. Accountability is something else entirely. Obviously, this governor is a lame duck. Does it have political implications for him, for his wife, who had been considered for a time a possible contender for governor? Does this attach to them in any damaging way?
I think for the governor and kind of others near the governor, as you say, he's now just got over a year left in his term. Barring his deciding to kind of run for another political office at some point, it's not clear what impact that would have. But there are others in state government who remain in state government who, at least their names have been attached to this to some extent. So again, we'll have to watch that issue of accountability. It's going to hinge very much on kind of what these investigations uncover. And I think it's important to note that that's what they are right now, investigations. We don't know exactly kind of what the situation was, what happened. And I think once those investigations conclude, there's been some comprehensive fact-finding. People know exactly what happened with Hope, Florida. Then I think questions of accountability become even more pertinent at that point.
So let's stick with the legislative side of things here in Florida. The 2026 session about to kick off in just a few weeks in January. The governor has presented his budget, $117 billion budget. It's his eighth and final budget to present to the legislature. So having seen that, what are your big takeaways?
It's going to be a very interesting budget year. As you know, in past years, the governor's budget got through the legislature, not completely unscathed, but sort of largely intact.
For a while, it was basically, almost rubber stamped.
Right. I mean, there was very little sort of pushback to that. Things have changed, as we now know, in the last couple of years, as they always do with a kind of governor who's reaching the end of his or her term in office. And the legislature, particularly the state house, has sort of reawakened to the idea that they are a co-equal branch of government, and they're sort of pushing back.
What a discovery.
Yeah, especially Speaker Daniel Perez, who, he and the governor are not exactly, best friends. And so there's been a lot of kind of crosstalk back and forth. I think you can expect to see significant changes to this budget, sort of like there were last year. As you say, it is a significant budget, $117 billion, actually $3 billion more than the current budget, which is about $114 billion. The governor's invested significant amounts of money in teacher pay, Everglades restoration, some other areas like that are priorities for him. He's also set aside some money to potentially help defray the cost of lost property taxes, depending on where that issue goes, and, put some more money into the state's rainy day fund. So I think it's a budget that's been presented, but there's high anticipation that particularly on the House side, they are likely to make significant changes to that budget.
One of the things you mentioned there, this 15% more money going directly to teachers than last year. He said that he's deliberately created it as a standalone budget item to give it some certainty that that money wouldn't be diverted for other educational purposes, that it really would end up for teachers in the classroom. Does that strike you as something that is fairly safe, I guess, from being picked apart by the legislature? It seems like that would be pretty popular. A lot of people focused on, trying to make lives for teachers a little bit easier.
You would think that would have support. In fact, in a lot of the sort of the property tax proposals that the legislature's kind of diving into as propositions they might put on the ballot, particularly on the House side, they've been very careful in a number of those proposals to only focus the property tax relief on that portion of property taxes that goes to local government, i.e. cities and counties, not to school districts around the state. So there seems to be sort of a broad recognition that, schools need to be sort of held harmless in a variety of these processes, and the governor's budget proposal is very much in keeping with that. What the state legislature, particularly the state house, does with that is something very different. Once they sort of dive into it and get into the details, they may uncover aspects of that proposed spending they don't like, or they want to do that a different way. Look, and there are always surprises in the legislature. In the last couple of years, there was a big dispute over how the legislature was going to reimburse school districts and, by extension, schools for advanced placement scores or international baccalaureate scores. So there are always surprises in this process. So I'm always reluctant to say this will kind of go through smoothly without any questions. The minute you say that is when it starts to become complicated. On the face of it, this feels like something that both the governor and the legislature can find where they can find common ground. But again, we'll see more once the House delves into this budget.
One thing that caught my eye was this Make America Healthy Again, budget priority of sorts, this MAHA money. One of the things that they are prioritizing is a pretty novel program in Florida to test for food contamination. But at the same time, the governor is proposing eliminating about 350 jobs that are currently vacant in this budget. And 225 of them are in county health departments, county health, services, which is in, sort of the locus of public health, the people who are working at the county level for people who, are in need of health care in some ways, or measuring it or responding to some sort of crises. How do you see that shift in health spending priorities?
I think that's going to be important, and there are a number of kind of reporters in the state who kind of are focused on healthcare, and I would strongly suspect that some are going to dive deeply into this issue because, as you say, Ann, county health offices, which all sort of flow down from the Florida Department of Health, but are kind of staffed in counties, those are crucial on being on the front line of public health issues, whether those are kind of epidemics that occur, whether those are sort of providing or contracting out to provide health services to people who don't have insurance or other forms of access to care. So I suspect there's going to be some deep investigation into, first of all, why do those number of vacancies exist at the county health level? Those are really, in many ways, crucial functions that again help to kind of regulate public health at the county by county level, and then kind of asking why, in that case, is the governor choosing to get rid of those particular offices as well. So I expect to see more reporting on those issues. As you say, there is a fairly strong alignment right now between the current governor's office in Florida and the Department of Health and Human Services, not just on some of these food-related issues, but also, as we've talked about previously, on the issue of vaccines and kind of what the state vaccine schedule is going to be and what that ultimately looks like. There are some steps the state can take at an administrative level through the Department of Health on vaccine, and they are actively taking those.
Yeah.
There are others that require legislative approval, and those seem to be moving much more slowly and with a lot less enthusiasm than at the executive level. So, but you're right, there has been a kind of a significant alignment between the state of Florida and the Department of Health and Human Services. As we've talked about before, though, there are plenty of issues where Florida and the federal government are not seeing eye to eye right now, whether that's on offshore oil drilling or AI regulation or a variety of areas. So, frankly, what might be surprising about those health issues is that it's an area where there's some alignment, because there's a bunch of issues where Florida and the federal government, might soon be at loggerheads.
I want to talk more about both of those things, but we do have a question from a different Michael who emailed, what needs to happen in order to get the recreational marijuana and abortion initiatives back on the ballot next year?
I think there are efforts underway to do just that, either in 2026 or probably more likely in some cases in 2028 during the presidential election year. And the process is just the same as when they got them on the ballot in the first place. You have to meet both the constitutional and the statutory requirements to have to gather the necessary number of kind of signatures to put it on the ballot. It then goes through a Supreme Court review process to determine whether it meets sort of the legal requirements of appearing on the ballot in terms of the ballot description. Is it a single subject, and a variety of other legal obligations? And then if you are able to sort of pass those tests, then it goes back on the ballot. So, my understanding is there are efforts underway on both of those fronts to put amendments back on the ballot at the earliest possible time.
And you say at the earliest possible time, but does it behoove them, given the issues, to wait until the 2028 election, a presidential cycle?
The general thinking has been that a presidential cycle tends to be better because of increased turnout, and those sorts of issues might help to kind of drive less frequent voters who may be more inclined to support some of these amendments to the polls. That theory obviously fell kind of just short in 2024. Both of these amendments received more than 50% of the vote. One received very close to the 60% standard required for constitutional amendments to pass, but neither of them got there. So traditionally, the thinking has been put them on a presidential year ballot because you're going to have the greatest turnout, particularly from low-frequency voters who might support that. Again, we'll have to track that in 2026 to see what that strategy will become.
So let's talk about the ways that this governor is not aligning with the Trump administration, and the AI reforms are a big part of that. The governor wants to create some regulations around data centers. He wants to make sure that parents have more access to AI chatbots. The Trump administration very much, bringing the hammer down on states that want to do anything on an individual basis that might create disruption in the industry.
There have been plenty of issues where the governor, even where I suspect there's been some disagreement, has at least publicly aligned or at least not publicly disagreed with the White House. He is obviously very passionate on the issue of AI, has really in many ways sort of made this the top priority of his final year as governor, kind of his number one issue. Just in the last couple of weeks, he rolled out what he's calling the Citizens AI Bill of Rights, in which, what he wants the state to do is take action to enhance child safety. At the sort of announcement where he rolled out his AI, he was joined by the parents of a young person who very tragically kind of committed suicide because of kind of an interaction with AI. So I think child safety is sort of the number one kind of plank in the governor's Bill of Rights. As you say, also trying to make sure that data centers are, an increasing fact of life. They're showing up all over the country. They use an enormous amount of energy, obviously, to store the data and power. They also use
water.
Water, right? I mean, even a kind of medium-sized data center uses about 110 million gallons of water a year. If you take a large data center, it might be close to 2 billion gallons of water a year and have huge impacts in communities as well. The governor's AI Bill of Rights are very focused on this as well. It's been interesting. There have been a lot of mandates the governor has put and the legislature have put on local governments. One thing that was interesting to me about the AI Bill of Rights is there was a plank in there that says we're going to protect local governments' rights to deny data centers coming into their community and also protect agricultural areas from having to host data centers as well.
Specifically saying home rule would hold.
Correct. That's right. So a bit of irony there, but it's been interesting. And again, an issue he's very clearly very convicted about. And AI is an increasing part of all of our lives. It's something that is omnipresent in business and commerce and in healthcare and a variety of other areas at this point. And there is a kind of passionate philosophical debate between those like the governor who feel like states should have the freedom and flexibility to design their own regulatory structures, and so that states can sort of be the laboratories for reform. I mean, that's kind of typically how it's worked, Ann, in our federal system. States kind of do the initial regulation and reform. The nation gathers data from those examples on what works and what doesn't, and then that may lead to a bit more of a national framework. That was frankly the model that led to the creation of the Affordable Care Act. I mean, Massachusetts had something very similar to that. Other states had efforts. They took those ideas and it became the ACA. So states being the laboratory of reform and being able to sort of be the best entities to regulate their particular needs is something the governor and other governors around the country have been passionate about.
Well, at the state level, but again, those are rights that they've largely taken over at the local level.
Correct. Right. So again, not that there's not some irony in this situation, but that perspective, kind of letting states take the lead on AI regulation, is very different from the perspective that the Trump administration has taken. And, for a couple of months, it was sort of a will they or won't they on the Trump administration issuing some sort of executive order on AI. Just in the last week, they have done that. The president signed an executive order to establish a single national framework on AI regulation. There's going to be a lot of controversy and litigation about this because, typically under the law, the only body that can what's called preempt regulation in an area is Congress. In other words, be able to preempt the states from regulating AI. What the Trump administration executive order has done has said that, if states are regulating in certain areas we don't approve, they've kind of made clear that this doesn't apply to child safety or data center infrastructure or some of those things. But if they're regulating AI in ways we don't approve, we're going to encourage the Justice Department to kind of go after them legally, sue them. We may look at their funding and try and take that away. So it's a pretty aggressive approach by the Trump administration to stop states from regulating AI, one that is with 100% certainty going to end up in court, given some of the constitutional and legal issues involved. And for that matter, the state of Florida might end up being one of the litigants in that dispute.
Just about 15 seconds. I'm going to ask you a big question. Redistricting. Will Florida do it? What's your expectation?
My expectation is they don't know yet. There's a lot of debate between the governor and the Senate, who think this should be done in a special session, versus the House, who think it should be done during a regular session. Until that schedule's worked out, I don't think anyone can count on Florida doing a mid-cycle redistricting.
All right. Well, Chris Hand, it is great to talk to you as always. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great holiday.
Same to you, Ann. See you in 2026.
All right. Up next, legendary jazz trumpeter and Jacksonville native Charles Tolliver makes his Jacksonville debut after more than 60 years in the music business. Welcome back. Well, after decades of performing all over the world, a Jacksonville native is returning to his roots for his first hometown performance. Here to tell us about his upcoming show is Charles Tolliver, jazz trumpeter and composer and legend. Charles Tolliver, it's such an honor to have you here. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
All right. We're also joined by John Lumpkin. Familiar to our listeners, he is a jazz artist, amazing drummer, educator, leader of the JL Institute Big Band. John, welcome back.
Hey, good morning, Ann. It's good to be back.
Well, it's great to have you both. Charles, I'm surprised that it's your first Jacksonville show. So you were born in Jacksonville. You didn't really live here all that long. You moved to New York when you were about 10, I guess. But tell us a little bit about what it means to sort of come back here and perform for the first time.
Well, I think it's super, you know. Didn't dream that I'd ever get back to Jacksonville to perform. As a matter of fact, those first 10 years has lasted me. I mean, my memory of Jacksonville is very keen right to this moment. It never left me. So the Jacksonville in me was always there, even though the family immigrated to New York. And I've come back a few times for memorials for family members who passed away, but only for a day to do that and go back. And so since I became a professional musician in my early 20s, just didn't work out that I got back here.
Yeah.
You know.
And you've performed with Herbie Hancock, Sonny Rollins, Max Roach, Art Blakey. So you have performed with greats. You have been, credited with some amazing innovations on the trumpet, and your style has been, recognized by, you've been Grammy nominated, Downbeat Magazine named you its, trumpeter of choice. So what has changed about your sound over the years? You've obviously been doing this for a long time. And what are your influences currently?
Well, I'm a a child of my grandmother, and of course my mother too. So when I was about 3 years old, that's about as far as you can go back. You know,
That's about as far.
I would be put next to the Victrola, and my father, he was still in the war, World War II, but they had jazz at the Philharmonic, Norman Grantz's, and that was all I heard 24/7. And by the time I was 5 years old, I could scat all of those things that are on there. So all of our original progenitors, of course, Norman Granz, he had them on these recordings. And so one day I said to Grandma, Leela, Grandma, I just saw in this pawn shop, which was the only pawn shop in Jacksonville, in the black area, around the corner from the Ritz Theater.
Huh?
I said, I see a little trumpet in there. I want that trumpet. So she saved her little pennies and she got that.
Wow.
I mean, she could play the C melody saxophone.
Okay.
And there was this church, which I'm sure has been knocked down, Holiness Church. And so she got this little trumpet for me, and I was off to the races. And I'm sure I think this church is still there. They didn't knock it down, off Davis Street, between Davis and Lee, an AME church.
Historic church. Yeah,
very historic church. And there, my grandfather, her husband, he attended. And so I would go there. So they said, okay, young guy, you with that trumpet, would you play for us something, for the church people? And so I played what's it called? Rocks of Ages Clear for me, and let me hide myself in thee. And they gave me an original 50-cent piece.
Wow.
If you had one of those now, it'd be worth.
Yeah.
And there was a man, the only man in that part of Jacksonville for black folk who was a teacher. So when I originally got this little cornet that my grandmother got for me, I went to him and I said, can you show me what those 3 pistons do? And he showed me 1, 2, 3, C scale, how you finger them, open, 1 and 3, 1 and 2, 1, open, 1 and 2, middle finger, open and I was off to the races.
Well, we're watching, for people who are watching our live stream, we're playing some video of you performing. And I know that this is a great opportunity for people, John, to be able to see Charles Tolliver for the first time. This is at the Friday Musicale on Friday, December 19th at 7 o'clock. And then he's going to be doing some record signing the next day at Tiger Records. What does it mean to have him here and to play with him?
Oh, man. Well, first and foremost, to be a part of this with Friday Musicale and Daniel Stark, to have my vision of bringing jazz back to Jacksonville with somebody that is from Jacksonville, legendary, coming back here to do a concert with the next generation of jazz, it's all encompassing. Like, I feel like this is a blessing clearly from God himself for me to be able to have this moment and serving this to give to the community here of Jacksonville. So, yeah, I want everybody to come out. Like, this is going to be momentous. And even with him going to Tiger Records, to be able to meet individuals there and share his music there. This is something that you don't want to miss. And I'm not trying to sell it. I'm saying it really because it really is something special.
Well, we'll listen to a little of Charles as we exit the show here for a few minutes. But we'll just say that when Dizzy Gillespie was asked in a Downbeat magazine interview, what trumpet players do you hear today who you like? His reply was Charles Tolliver. It's a pleasure to have you here. John Lumpkin as well. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll be back in just a minute.
National Theater Live presents A Streetcar Named Desire. Gillian Anderson, Vanessa Kirby, and Ben Foster lead the cast in Tennessee Williams' timeless masterpiece. From visionary director Benedict Andrews, this acclaimed production was filmed during a sold-out run at the Young Vic Theater in 2014. Wednesday, January 14th at WJCT Studios. Popcorn and cash bar available. Doors open at 6:30. Film starts at 7. Go to wjct.org/film for tickets. Join WJCT for Guitar by Candlelight, featuring Benassai and Pavlo. One night only, Thursday, January 15th at the WJCT Soundstage. Let Benassai and Pavlo take you on an intimate musical journey to exotic places with classic songs. With fiery Spanish guitar, cool Mediterranean rhythms, join Benassai and Pavlo for Guitar by Candlelight, an intimate concert experience. One night only, Thursday, January 15th at the WJCT Soundstage. Go to wjct.org/events for tickets.
Pantone's color of the year is Cloud Dancer. It's white, off-white, maybe a little gray. Cue the internet hot takes.
It feels dystopian.
Is the song of the year silence?
I hope you're hungry for nothing.
Oh, but that's precisely the point of color science. Colors provoke emotions in us, but exactly how do they do it? That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11 on WJCT News 89.9.
2025 brought a new presidential administration, upheaval in Washington and the federal government, but also great moments in sports and entertainment and political firsts. We're rounding up what happened this year with our second annual 1A News Roundup quiz. It's your opportunity to call in live and show how much you know, score some swag, and bragging rights. We play the 1A Quiz of the Year next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, whether you've got some last-minute shopping to do or you just want to cozy up with a Christmas movie, there is an event at the park in the historic La Villa, the Lift Every Voice and Sing Park. It is part of an ongoing park activation project that my guests have been heading up and participating in, and they're here to tell us about it. We are joined by Trey Ford. He is the founder of the Florida Fish Pepper Company and the group activator for the Vibrant Places Collective. Trey, welcome.
Thank you.
We're also joined by Carla Michelle Jones, a Black history storyteller and facilitator for the Vibrant Places Collective. Welcome back, Carla.
Good morning.
And Charmian Thrasher, who is a skincare entrepreneur and also activator with the Vibrant Places Collective. I don't know why I keep sticking on that. It is nice to meet you, Charmian. Thanks for being here.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so this is kind of a first for the park because the park is new. It has been working on projects to get people there and to enjoy it and to participate. This is La Villa and Lights, and it is going to be sort of a defining event because it is the first holiday. So tell us a little bit about what you have lined up.
Yes, we are really excited to bring back all of the activators from this year. We've had several, 17 to be exact. So different people who brought programs to the park and different events. So we're welcoming them back as well as their families and their attendees kind of for a year-end celebration and reunion of sorts.
And so these have been musicians, vendors, people that set up and are, sort of celebrating this new facility in La Villa, but also making sure that it's something that people have an opportunity to go to and experience because it was a long time coming.
Yes, and Trey is one of the activators. So he has that experience of bringing an event to the park all year long, and he's also the main host and organizer of La Villa in Lights.
Excellent.
So he can speak to some of the entertainment and vendors we'll have out there.
Well, first I got to know about the fish pepper because this is your deal. So tell us what about the fish pepper, how you're bringing it to Florida.
Definitely. So the fish pepper has a really cool history. It was brought from Haiti to the Baltimore, Maryland area, and it's called a fish pepper because of probably language barrier. So it probably has a really cool Creole name that I haven't been able to find yet, but peppers grow really well in Florida. And during my time at Eartha's, I ended up buying some peppers from a farmer's market, which is kind of what I'm activating at La Villa and Lights and at Lift Every Voice in Sing Park. And it's a very pretty plant. It's green and white. And so our goal with the market is to generate some more agribusiness, especially in downtown. And it's a food desert down there until Publix is built down there. I think they changed the Harvey's is going to be an Aldi now. So that was why we thought a market would be perfect at Lift Every Voice in Sing Park.
And so what else will this holiday event showcase? Because there is, as I said, there's a movie event. There's live jazz. Tell us what all to expect.
So it's going to start with some sultry jazz from Akia Uwanda. We're going to have a couple of other activators there like Ryan McNair, who does Ngoma Thunder, and he's going to do a presentation on Kwanzaa. We'll have DJ Dan Lee there doing some music. Aaron Kendrick will be giving some awards to the activators that have been activating the park throughout.
She's a local artist.
Yep, she's a local artist. So tons of things for people to enjoy. It's free, obviously. And then in the end, we're showing a nostalgic movie this Christmas with Chris Brown and Lauren London. So that'll kind of wrap up the day.
And so people can bring a blanket. That's an outdoor
Absolutely.
screening. Yeah. And so in terms of being a participant, but also somebody that's helping to activate the park, Charmian, what does it mean to have sort of the first holiday event there?
It means a lot. We've done so many amazing things with the park this year. This is our first year of actually activating the space. And so we've done, I think we're approaching 100 activations in about 9 months,
Wow.
which is a lot of work.
A lot of work.
Yes, we've been very busy. But I think it just gives people a great opportunity to create community, meet their neighbors, really connect with people, which is something that I think we've really been missing, in the public space, area here in Jacksonville.
Sure. And especially La Villa, which has, been, experiencing a resurgence, but certainly has had a period after a lot of the area was just razed in the name of urban renewal. And so sort of finding or rediscovering some of that identity is important. Do you hope that this will become an annual event?
Absolutely. We are already gearing up, and planning to have another great year next year in 2026. So we want to bring the La Villa and Lights back, of course, for the holiday, as well as, some of our other recurring, monthly activations.
Yeah. And Trey, what might we expect? Or I mean, can you give us a little sneak peek at what events we might be seeing at the park next year?
Well, yeah, I think Carla can answer this.
Okay,
I am
Carla.
excited to push more film at the park.
Oh,
So this is our
yes.
first time doing film. But yeah,
Okay.
Carla, you can probably answer that.
We have lots of ideas. Film is definitely one of them. So this is our first time showing a film at the park too, with this Christmas. And we are in community with a bunch of local filmmakers. We want to see more music. That's the feedback we've gotten from our surveys. More music, more business opportunities. So that's what we're looking forward to.
Well, I'm sure it'll be a cool event. It is La Villa and Lights. It's the first one, Saturday, December 20th. It starts at 4 and it goes till 9. And that, of course, is at the Lift Every Voice in Sing Park on Lee Street. I hope you have a great holiday. Carla Michelle Jones, Trey Ford, Charmian Thrasher, thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate it.
Thank
you, Ann.
Thanks for having us.
All right. And that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you missed anything, you can find all of our past and current shows at firstcoastconnect.org. And while you're there, you can sign up to get daily show news, including a breakdown of upcoming guests and topics. It's our new newsletter. It'll be delivered to your inbox every weekday morning. Join us tomorrow when we talk about the week's top headlines with our Media Roundtable. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT.
First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. When people are hurt through no fault of their own, finding the who, what, when, where, why, and how that led to the accident is critical to proving the truth.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the